Rouge Rugby wishes to extend our condolences to the family and friends of rugby ATL owner Marcus Callaway. A lifelong fan of rugby, Marcus was instrumental in getting Rugby ATL started and was able to see the team make their first championship final in 2021. He will be greatly missed. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Rouge Rugby podcast. I'm Stu Hardy, and thank you for joining us in 2022. Hope you had a wonderful Christmas and a festive New Year wherever you are, and hoping it had a good holiday season as well. Is Derek Brissett. Derek, happy holidays. Welcome back. How have you been?
Yeah, man. Happy New Year. Hope Santa was good to you and the rest of the family. Hopefully you got to enjoy something before we got told we're no longer allowed to go outside anymore. So that was a bit of a bummer at the end of the Christmas season there. But hey, yeah, man. Did you get any fun like rugby gifts or anything over the holidays? Did you get up to anything exciting, anything special while we had a couple of weeks off from the podcast?
Oh, I think it was a good time to stay indoors, especially whilst the cold winds were blowing around and
the fact that you're not allowed to go anywhere.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's the thing. It's like, things are locking down again, but it's also too cold to leave your house. So you're kind of in a catch-22 situation.
I remember, so the day we put out the last episode when we interviewed the Vancouver Wave, I think so that was the Friday that Spider-Man came out, and I went to go see Spider-Man, and it was like a full theater, right, where you're still allowed, and then like the next day they were like half capacity and you can't even drink or eat in the movie theater anymore. And then like 2 weeks later we're like, or just after Christmas, I guess, we're in basically back to what it feels like back to like what we were like last year, which isn't really a fun place to be. But I just brought down this whole podcast. What a start to the new year. It's just be like, hey, let's depressing stuff here.
All right. I think it's only fair and reasonable we give our viewers and listeners some more uplifting news.
Yeah. Did you get it? You get anything fun for Christmas? Any like rugby themed gifts out there?
I didn't really get any rugby themed gifts, but I did get this frame. If you're watching on YouTube, Rouge Rugby YouTube channel, this frame for the painting that's done by Samantha Waj, I believe, and it's
that's cool.
Captain Lucas Rumble.
Oh, is that the one she does like with the rugby ball?
Yeah,
she uses the rugby ball. That's really cool. So you got a frame for that? That's a rugby themed gift.
Yeah, so we'll clutch at straws and we'll call it. The thing is, I've had it.
How's that clutching at straws? I guess did you?
Oh, because that's it. I've had the artwork for like a few months now. I just haven't had the means to properly show it off. But fantastic painting, Sam. Really appreciate it. And speaking of,
it actually looks nice because it's like if you are watching your screen, it is the only thing that's visible on your wall.
Yeah, that was the intention. I intend to get some more artwork up at some point, but it's only the start of the year. We've got to grow the wall gradually.
You gotta get Samantha to come in with the rugby ball, just paint the entire wall.
I'll have to have a chat with my landlady about that.
Better to ask for permission.
It's fine. Speaking of the Arrows, we have had some news over our break, obviously taking a few weeks off. We've had some signing news, and we've got some great names coming into the squad. There's a few familiar names and a few new faces. So starting off, we have Brandon Ferguson joining from the Peterborough Pagans as a winger. We have now officially from draftee to signed player Sam Mace, 23-year-old hooker from the Kingston Panthers, also Bytown Blues and Ottawa GGs. From Hawke's Bay in New Zealand, we have Denon Robinson Bartlett, a 21 wing or center combo. Joining at wing and fullback is Matt Hood of the Aussie Sevens. So joining from the Sevens World Series into the 15s once more. Now a familiar face is joining us, or I say familiar face, more familiar beard. Mike Shepherd is back for his 4th season at lock for the Arrows. Arrows already had the rights to this player, and now they've signed him. Is a flanker, James O'Neill, acquired by that trade with Los Angeles. Another fullback signing, a graduate of the Arrows Academy, is Mitch Vorolek. Now another familiar face joining in the front row, the oldest debutant for Rugby Canada. It is Rob Brower, age 39, joining us for his 4th year as prop. And we've gone from oldest debutant to youngest ever player in the MLR is Kobe Faust, 19-year-old winger, here for his 2nd year with the Arrows. And filling out a under 20s Canadian star a few years ago, been playing with Barmy Beach at fullback and is now back into the professional scene, is Connor McCann. So a lot of names to go over there, Derek. Anyone that sparks your interest?
Well, I mean, obviously all of them spark interest. Toronto Arrows podcast, we should be interested in all of them. There's kind of quite the range here. You obviously got some drafted players, a couple academy guys mixed in, some longtime Ontario amateur, highly touted Ontario amateur players as well. You got a couple overseas signings mixed in too, right? So it's a pretty fun group. And when you don't do a podcast for like 4 weeks, or the signings tend to add up here. I think the thing that really kind of does stick out to me with the group though is before, like, I think in the last episode, before we took our Christmas break here, we're kind of looking at the Toronto Arrows roster, and we were talking about, what they need. Not necessarily as far as like talent or like holes to fill on the roster, but just, number of bodies at certain positions just weren't quite added up. Right. And, the 2 ones that kind of jumped out was like, maybe some extra, some extra forward or front row depth was needed. They're just as, again, not like a comment on the quality, but just like the number of guys wasn't quite there yet. And then, and the fullbacks and the wingers were, there was a lot of room to add some bodies in for those 2 positions. And you kind of look over the break here, and Senna was kind to the Arrows and dropped off plenty of front row depth and fullbacks and wingers. Mike Shepherd and James O'Neill are pretty much the only 2 of the 11 guys that they signed over that break that don't necessarily fit that description. Obviously, Shepherd is, he's in his 4th season with the Arrows. It's like he's been a very key player for that squad in all the seasons that he has played. And it's going to be a big part of like a physical second row for the Toronto Arrows, right? That helps them. That's certainly the strong engine room that helps that front row, helps the Arrows be able to win scrums. So great to see him back as well. That's the Arrows locks are looking very good with Cellini, Bailey, Shepherd, Wadden, and even Flesh all kind of returning or being acquired. And then you also got James O'Neill, who, like we said, was part of that trade with for Ben Lesage to LA. And, he's been one of the top, Canadian prospects, right? So obviously excited to have him officially on the team. But as for the rest of it, like it's the biggest, all the other additions, obviously, Brower and Mace coming back. The Arrows front row looks, quite frankly, excellent, across the board. It was something that when we were talking about the team at the end of last season, the front row kind of seemed like it was a bit of an issue last year. Obviously, part of that issue was the fact that they were playing in Atlanta and really at times were very limited to what they could actually do about it, as far as like, bringing in other guys. And, obviously, ultimately, players from other teams ended up getting loaned to the Arrows to kind of, to play front row positions at different points in the season. But you kind of look at the depth right now, like, so Brower and Mace being signed. So, at Loosehead, you got like Keith, Sione, Brower, which is some good depth there. Hooker, you got Quatrin McRogers, and then Mace, you're one of your draft picks. And at tight head, you got Roland, Salmon, Ouellette, and Warden, right? So you got a couple draft picks mixed in there. And then, Salmon and Sione obviously are, some overseas additions that could bolster the front row. And, bringing in back a guy like Brower, who, in 2019, right, he was the first team All-Star, had first team All MLR, right, for, at the loose head prop position. And, even in the handful of games that he actually got into at the end of the season last year, right, like he still looks like he's got it and he's ready to go, right? So I personally like am excited to see him back, because he's he's quite a bit of fun to watch play. And obviously having that veteran leadership on the team is going to be a huge benefit. And just like I said, like he can like however Peter Smith decides that this depth chart shapes up, like any one of those loose head props being your third, your third choice loose head is a good kind of a good problem to have when you're kind of looking at some of the quality guys in the front row there. And then the next thing that kind of needed to be added was definitely the fullbacks and wingers, which came in a variety of players. Obviously, you got a couple of guys like Fost obviously returning. You got Connor McCann, Mitch Vorelek. So Vorelek's an academy guy. McCann is just a Balmy Beach legend. Brandon Ferguson coming in from Peterborough too. And then you got a couple guys overseas, right? So Matt Hood, who's Australian sevens player, tons of speed to burn, which is obviously super important as a sevens player. And Denon Robinson Bartlett, who I guess who's a wing center, and like he's only 21 years old, from New Zealand too. So I think that's huge to get a guy that young coming over from New Zealand as well. And obviously Hawke's Bay, right? So it's a connection with the Formus, right, from the new forwards coach, right? So who was also at Hawke's Bay. So it's nice to see. It's like obviously it helps when it's like we've kind of talked about it before, as you can kind of see around the league, right? Coaches like bringing in guys that they've coached before, and every coach kind of has their guys, right? And obviously, being a wing and center, he maybe wasn't necessarily involved in too much of the scrum or the line out coaching that DeFormes was doing down in Hawke's Bay, but obviously a player on the team, and if you're on the team, like the coach is going to be around, but it's but obviously he can speak to the type of person, the type of player that Robinson Bartlett is. So looks like that's going to be it'll be a ton of fun, and the depth chart's starting to kind of take shape a little bit here. Stu, anything that sticks out to you as we've kind of doubled up on doing a bit of a rundown on all the players there?
Well, I did find it funny that in the same announcement of Rob Brower, they also included Kobe Faust, like two opposites on the age category. But then again, with youth comes speed and agility, and with age comes experience and knowledge. So I like that. And although that's the thing, Brower is 39, Faust is only 19. You could have another player that was 20 years old in that time frame, also maybe playing in MLR at some point.
That is. So you're saying like Rob Brower could be Kobe Faust's dad, or at least is old enough to be Kobe Faust's dad? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying the maths is there, but I'm not implying anything. I'm just saying that there could have been a player that was born when Rob Brower was 20 or 19 himself that would be still eligible or older when.
Yeah, that's how time works, man.
Anyway, time is a flat circle, as we found out these past few years. I think there's been a lot of hype, especially around James O'Neill. There was the reason why the LA Giltini selected him during the draft, is one of the contributing factors to having him be acquired in the trade with Ben Lesage. I'm going to be interested to see Robinson Bartlett and Matt Hood play, Antipodeans, opposite sides of the wing, the Tasman between the two of them. And, it should be interesting. As you said, Robinson Bartlett has experience with the current, from today's date, the current coaching staff. Matt Hood, as we said, played with the Aussie Sevens and has decided to move back to the 15s since he was dropped from the long list for the Olympics in 2021. But it's like the 2020 Olympics played in 2020. It's like the World Cup, 2021 World Cup played in 2022. Again, time is a flat circle.
Let's be honest, man. Like, the only reason that none of these sports organizations are renaming their events is because they already spent the money on signs and like t-shirts and stuff.
Yeah, of course.
Right? That's got to be it, right? Because I legitimately cannot keep track of like the 2020 Olympics were like 5 months ago in 2021.
Yeah.
And then, like, what's the rugby? The Rugby World Cup is like the Rugby World Cup 2021
played in 2022.
It's gonna be funny. It's gonna be funny looking back on this and being like the absurdity of Stanley Cup being awarded in like October that one year.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's gonna be what a time.
Well, at least you won't be mixing up your anniversary again next time that happens.
Oh yeah. Well, that's gonna be the problem. I'll be like, oh, I forgot the.
We'll bring that up every single year.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, I thought
every October. It's like, oh, it's our anniversary, is it?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, this was during the Stanley Cup, right? And because it was during the Stanley Cup, so it's like, hey, remember that one year that the Stanley Cup's going to be in like July, maybe. I don't know. We'll see how I guess this is a bit of a tangent, but I guess we'll see how the NHL with all their postponements and everything.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, like I guess, but because the players aren't going to the Olympics now, which is a whole different talk. But it's like I guess they got a 3-week window that they can make up the games. Maybe they don't have to push it back anymore. It's crazy how much this is still like just havoc on like sports and everything. But that's a tangent that we don't have to get too into it at all.
Well, we'll get into how COVID is affecting rugby, especially in a bit. But before we go into that, I just want to mention some notable departures from the Arrows, which have been announced to us through America's Rugby News. So Brian, thanks for letting us know this. So notable departures. Unfortunately, Manuel Diana has been announced to have left the team as well, which is a real shame because I know that he was an incredible signing. However, there was also a rumor last year about him going to Bristol, and everyone agreed as like, as soon as that kind of money comes into the picture, then maybe not. Obviously, he's stuck around for 2021, but maybe he's decided that now's the time to go to pastures new, and which then we've had Manuel Montero, who I know is gaining a bit of popularity, especially amongst Arrows fans, especially his performance against New York with his hat trick of tries there. I know that was great to watch. Joaquin Tucalet. Now this is a bit interesting because when he was signed on a multi-year deal. But it appears now that he has decided that he's returned to Argentina. He's returned to amateur level rugby. So now, obviously, he retired from test duty before joining the Arrows. That's a disappointing loss, I've got to say, because I was thinking, especially when the initial press release came out, it's like, oh, well, we can see him in 2022. And it's like, you can in Argentina. But as we all know, especially over the past couple of years, plans change and, things can't be set in stone. Taylor Adams has also left. And Pat Parfrey has decided to turn his focus to his studies, which, as an epidemiologist, definitely relevant at this time of. So, to all those players, all 5 that we've just mentioned, thank you for your contributions to the arrows. I know we as fans truly appreciate it. Um, for those who are going on to pastures new, we wish you all the best. For those who have decided to hang up the boots, then thank you for your service to the game. And those that are hopefully taking a year out, we hope to see you back in Arrows colours as soon as possible. Now, we've been mentioning lockdowns and coronavirus, and something that came about is that the OUA was not classified as an elite amateur league by the Ontario government. Now, as someone who only found out what OUA stands for about a week ago, I'm probably not the best person to talk about this. However, we do have a Canadian that grew up under the OUA system. So, Derek, take it away.
Yeah, so I guess if you don't know what the OUA is, so obviously Canada university sport is there's a governing body for that that's called U Sports, and most of the provinces or collections of provinces kind of regionally have their own, mini governing body within that. So on the OUA is Ontario University Sport, which I mean, any friends south of the border, I mean, you get how the NCAA works and how like the Big Ten and everything kind of fits into that, right? Um, it's kind of the same thing. So basically, the OUA is the governing body for university level sport in Ontario. Um, Similarly, there is the OCAA, with Ontario College Athletic Association, which is the governing body for college sports in Ontario as well. And essentially, as we kind of alluded to, which is really, I mean, without getting like super political or whatever on the podcast here, kind of unfortunate that we've like in Ontario, we're back into essentially a lockdown situation where pretty much everything that is fun is closed. And but if you work, you still got to go to work, but everything fun's closed. But part of that is that I mean, this doesn't necessarily impact rugby at the moment because it's not the university rugby sort of season right now. But it is just kind of like one of, I don't know, I guess it just really like kind of annoyed me. And it's like rugby is obviously part of the OUA, OCAA. At the for women's rugby, and then obviously there's that whole thing with men's rugby not really having proper U Sport status, which is another issue entirely. But basically, when the Ontario government shut everything down, pro sports are still allowed to happen, right? Which obviously you see in the NHL, the NBA right now. You see obviously the Toronto Arrows are still training. But they basically shut down all amateur sports except for a handful of leagues that they deemed to be an elite amateur league, which includes the CHL, which is to the surprise of absolutely nobody, the PWHL, and then quite frankly, it gets kind of weird after that. Like, I don't think anybody's shocked that we're keeping like major junior hockey and women's hockey up, but it was like the Elite Baseball League of Ontario, which I'm not even quite sure what that is, to be honest with you. There is League One Soccer, Junior A Lacrosse, which again, kind of fair and maybe not as lucrative as hockey, but sure. And then you got women's field lacrosse as well, and high school basketball, which is kind of interesting because like high school basketball players also kind of go up to become university level basketball players.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also, so either way, so those are the only leagues that were deemed elite amateur leagues by the Ontario government, and which essentially means that the OUA and the OCAA are completely shut down for every sport. And I just think like it's just like, I don't know, I guess it's just it's a really like annoying, I guess, stance from like the government, because I mean, you take out like, you kind of look at the way MLR is developing right now, right? And like university rugby to a certain at least age demographic or people that are still in school is arguably like is one of the highest levels that you can play of amateur rugby, right? Obviously you can move on and play like top level club rugby for wherever you may be after that and stuff, right? Which is still like a good level. And obviously a lot of like the Arrows played in like, the Marshall Premiership and top level amateur rugby in Ontario. But a lot of, you kind of look at the Toronto Arrows roster, and a lot of those players are also former, OUA or OCAA rugby players, especially obviously the guys that grew up and are from Ontario, right? And you kind of look at, the way the system is sort of set up right now, like in Major League Rugby, like the draft isn't like a club level draft or something, right? They're not drafting like the top amateur players, not necessarily like the NHL, where it's like they just kind of draft people based on age. It doesn't really matter, if they're in school or just playing major junior hockey or playing overseas in Europe or whatever, right? Like the rules of the Major League Rugby draft are specifically mentioned to be saying that, you have to be in school, right, to be eligible for the draft, right? And it's like I kind of look at the draft last year, and it's like Emerson Pryor was drafted by Utah, so he goes to Trent, so he's an OUA rugby player. And then you also have Sam Mace, who was drafted by Toronto. He's goes to Ottawa, which is kind of a weird situation because Ottawa is in Ontario. Some teams play OUA, some teams play in Quebec. The rugby team's actually in Quebec, but because it's the Ontario government and Ottawa is physically in Ontario, they're shut down too anyways. But and then you kind of look at that, right? And it's like, so basically the Ontario government just said that, like, playing at that level isn't considered elite sports, right? And to even kind of go further than that too, there was 39 OUA athletes at the Tokyo Olympics this past year. There's 91 OUA players that are now currently in the CFL, right? And I mean, like I said, it's like that doesn't, yeah, Stu, there you go. You have your bright yellow CFL hat on because you knew I would make that point, right? And it's like I got those numbers off Sportsnet, watching Tim and Friends on Sportsnet, and they kind of got into it a little bit in there. And it's just, it's one of those things where it's like I just don't understand how we, as like it feels crazy that our government sits here and is like, OUA sports, like university level sports, aren't considered elite, when it's like you look at it and in the MLR right now, and it's like, if you want to go with OUA, the provincial equivalent across the board, right? Guys, obviously Canadian players got drafted from schools in BC as well, and then right, and it's like the MLR draft is looking at guys playing OUA rugby or Ontario University rugby and stuff, and obviously like a good chunk of the women's national team plays OUA rugby or the equivalent in whichever province that they grow up in, right? And or whichever school that each individual player attends, right? A lot of the players on the women's team, and even like, for example, like Sophie DeGoody right now by the Ontario government is not an elite athlete.
Yeah.
Based the literal definition that the Ontario government just put in, she's not an elite athlete, right? She's I mean, she's on the Canadian national team, has played professionally in England, but by this definition, because she's on Queens, she wouldn't be considered an elite athlete. It's crazy. It's also it's just, I just think it's crazy, and I don't know. I was just like, it's one of those things where it's like we kind of think, and it's like you kind of look like south of the border sometimes, and it's like, and I think culturally in Canada, we obviously have a bit of a different approach to like university and like school related sports than our friends south of the border do. But it is kind of like one of those things where it's, we've spent the last like year being like, what does Rugby Canada got to do to like get better and stuff? And sometimes it's like, you kind of look at stuff like this and it's like, yeah, man, like we have governments that don't even consider like some of the top available players that you can have. Like, I mean, like Ben Lesage played at the last World Cup as essentially a university player. Like his team at the World Cup was listed as UBC. like when you're looking at like the team sheet and what club the guy plays for, right?
Yeah.
And it's university and stuff. It's crazy. And it's like I think you kind of look at it and it's like, yeah, like part of it too, like our governments don't even consider like university athletics to be, considered an elite performance, high performance sport, despite the fact that it's like some of these amateur athletes that are going to school and stuff are representing Canada. It's annoying to kind of just to see, right? Because especially, as a rugby fan too, knowing how important like university and collegiate rugby is, the fact that it's like pretty much almost every player on the Arrows has played this level, right? And not considered elite though, right? And then like it's I don't know. I don't really have much else to say on this other than it is absolutely nuts that the athletes are not considered elite. Like it's crazy. And I know sometimes like in Canada, maybe like, there's not a whole lot of like youth, like Sportsnet, TSN, they don't necessarily show a whole lot of like youth sports events, maybe outside of like, maybe outside of like the Vanier Cup or like Carleton's basketball team might get on TV, especially if they're playing the random times that they play NCAA teams. But so there's not a whole lot of OUA sports like on TV or that's like necessarily commercially viable, but that doesn't make it not elite by any stretch. And it's like I don't know. It's one of many mind-boggling decisions from the Ontario provincial government as of late. But that's the end of my rant. I don't even know if it sounded good. And probably I didn't even make a great point there, other than just be like it's ridiculous. I don't know, Stu. Any thoughts on this now that you're
Now I'm all up to speed. I've actually found the OUA have released a statement saying behind the scenes, on the sidelines, and certainly on the playing field, this recognition is well deserved for the talented individuals that make up the conference as is witnessed year in and year out. The notion and the hard-working student athletes who have long strived towards the goal of competing at the post-secondary level and proudly representing one of the OUA's 20 member institutions in the sport they love aren't considered elite by the government of Ontario is a disservice to the dedication, commitment, and talent that they continue to show on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, but I think even like part of the non-classification, it's not that like games are shut down, which have been shut down for like a while. Like they shut down a lot of the winter sports seasons early, heading into like the Christmas break and stuff. They shut that down, and I think they were planned on being shut down for a little bit in January, anyways. So, but it's like so you kind of have that, but it's like they're not allowed to like get together as a team and like train or anything. It's not that they're just not playing games. And I mean, to be honest, it's like, maybe if it was just like a blanket, like, hey, all amateur sport stop or whatever, I think people would kind of like shrug a little bit more about that.
It just seems to be like pick and choose.
The CHL is going to be upset no matter what, because there's like legit money to be made in major junior hockey here in Canada. But so I don't think anybody would ever be surprised. Like would be surprised if that keeps going, but like it's just it, you know what I mean? It's just, but it's like the other sports that got classified, right, being like high school basketball is elite, but like when those players get older and go to a post-secondary school, that's not elite. Right. And it's like, but even at that, right, it's like, you know what I mean? Like a lot of too, like, looking at like the junior A lacrosse and stuff, right? And it's like, people go and play for their school after they play, lacrosse or whatever, right? And like, yeah, even the CHL, right? Like even OUA hockey, like it's got a lot of former OHL players in that league, right? So I don't know. It's mind-boggling and stuff. I know I saw a couple of like the Arrows players and stuff that did play in like the OUA kind of like retweeting or sharing that that OUA statement to their story and stuff. And it's just, I don't know, it's nonsense. It's maddening, or like it's that they're not considered elite, especially like knowing like you just look at the two base ones. It's like it's the biggest feeder league to the CFL, right, which has a Canadian roster quota that you need to fill out. So it's like like the youth sports as a whole, but like I don't know province to province which province produces the most CFL players, but um right, and it's like, so there's so many guys that play that, and it's like the when you hold the CFL draft, it's like you're drafting all like youth sports level / OUA guys. Doesn't, and you know what I mean? So like that's not elite or whatever, but it's like literally like you said, it's guys like Emerson Pryor played for Trent and are pro, and were able to, so good that a professional team wants them to play for them this year, right? So it's I don't know, that's the end of my rant or whatever. Annoyed, I'm just annoyed by it or whatever. Hopefully we're all kind of allowed to go outside again soon anyways.
Well, the government may allow us, the weather may say otherwise, but I get what you mean. I mean, I'm just annoyed that like the gyms are closed, like,
yeah.
So you can't eat. So even if you wanted to work out as an amateur athlete in a gym, you can't do it.
No, McDonald's is still open though, so I mean,
yeah. But do they have the real egg sandwiches that Timmy's have? Yeah.
Well, man, if Farmer's Wrap, though, if you're gonna get anything from Timmy's, though, it's got to be the Farmer's Wrap.
Anyway, okay, now I think we're going off on a tangent. Okay, so again, something else that happened that was more specific to rugby and indeed the MLR.
Yes, let's talk about a fun thing. Let's
talk about fun thing.
Let's
positive
go.
Thing.
Fun thing.
Is a new docuseries called Inside the Scrum. It can be found on Fox Sports 2 in the United States, with repeat going on the Rugby Network. This is a docu-series following the Austin Gilgronis during the 2021 season. At the time of recording, there were 3 episodes out, but the 3rd episode came out today, so we've only seen the first 2. And, this isn't the first documentary series following a rugby team. On Amazon Prime, there's All or Nothing with the New Zealand All Blacks as well. Obviously, this is not to the same scale of production.
Here, I have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
Is that the only one you can think of?
Off the top of my head, there's also things like The Story of Rugby on CBC Gem, which is also on Amazon Prime.
That's not following a team, though. That's just a straight up, like, that's a history documentary. That's not following a team.
Well, it's following like the RFU. In the sense
of team,
that's where the money is, so we're going to follow them and all their faults. Emphasis on the faults.
How many?
But anyway, let's focus on this new series following the AGs. So, like I said, the first 2 episodes have come out. Episode 1 follows the first 6 games, I believe, of the first season. The first episode follows the first 6 games of the 2021 season. Episode 2 has a reflection on the preseason and prior seasons of Austin, back when they were the Austin Elite and just before the 2020 season. And then it continues following the Austin season up to that point, I think up to game 8. And it ends with a victory for the AGs, but the downside is that Connor Mooneyham has suffered a concussion during the game.
Mm-hmm.
So what have you made of these 2 episodes that you've seen, Derek?
Yeah, I've really liked them so far. Like you said, 3 episodes out at the time we were recording, but the 3rd episode just came out, so I haven't actually had time to watch it. So we'll keep this discussion to the first 2 episodes, and I guess are we spoiling things here? Or are we kind of?
Well, I've just given a brief synopsis.
Yeah, also, I guess I was going to say,
if you've seen the season,
the season actually happened.
You already know what happened. So
I really liked it, man. I think when I look at something like Inside the Scrum, like I said, it's like when I asked you kind of like, is that All Blacks one the only thing that you can think of? Is, I mean, I know that there's been more. I think there was like Chasing the Sun for like the Springboks, which is like impossible to find legally. But it's, there doesn't seem to be like a whole lot of things like this for rugby in general, yet alone rugby, an American team or a North American team. So I think like just the idea to actually do this show, immediate, just that's perfect, that's great. I'm so like when I saw that this was being done, I was so happy that Major League Rugby was doing it, or the Austin Gilgronis are doing it. um and then, so like watching it though too, like I think with something like this, the parts that I really enjoy, because it's like I know how the season played out and stuff, right? um when you kind of have shows like this, I think, the one thing that kind of fascinates me and stuff about these kind of documentaries is you get to learn a little bit more about the actual players and the coaching staff themselves, right? And I think when it really all comes down to it, like, sports on one hand is about the athletic competition that's actually taking place, right? But on the other hand, it's about like the story behind
Yeah.
that athletic competition that's taking place, right? And when you kind of look around, professional, like North American sports right now, it's, the leagues that do, like, that are, succeeding the most, whether it's like financially or viewership or whatever, it's like they're the leagues that are the best at creating those stories, right? And
Yeah.
making, like, like I said, it's like the NBA, I think, is a good example, because it's like in the NBA, it's like all the players are like their own like personalities and brands and
Yeah.
everything, right? It's like they all have, so that you can kind of follow it. And I think that's incredibly important. And I think, like, looking through this, um the first two episodes, and it's like I think, I thought there was some like really good like story building elements to it. To like a couple kind of jumped out at me a little bit. Was like them talking to Mac Mason about his grandfather,
Yeah.
and having, like, showing the team wearing the black armbands, him talking about like how much that meant to him, and then having that lead into his game-winning penalty goal against Atlanta, right? And
Yeah.
it's like that's, in like however long that scene was, like 2 minutes or whatever. In 2 minutes, you made me care about like Mac Mason a lot. In
Yeah.
that, like, that's good storytelling. So I really did enjoy that. I thought also the same thing. It's like Connor Mooneyham Connor Mooneyham getting quite the amount of screen time in this show. Um, but it's like, but because of that though, it's like, you had the things where it was like, you're showing him like visiting like the restaurant that he used to work at, fishing with his dad, um showing things like, Sam Harris on vacation with his family, like on a bye week or preseason, or whenever that national parks trip where he was talking about some a Prada that's in the middle of the desert, which I really don't like. I don't understand the appeal to that. But Sam Harris seemed to have fun, and that is the most important part of that. Like you kind of said, right? This episode 2 kind of ends where Connor Mooneyham got hurt, but it's like, as you're watching that as a viewer, like, it's like as someone watching it and stuff, the storytelling, like, if you're not a rugby fan, right, and you don't know how this season plays out, the fact that you've kind of introduced Connor Mooneyham as like, like a one of the main players on the team, a bit of a major character. It's like by the time you hit that end of the second episode when he gets hurt, it's like you really, it feels like you care that he got hurt, right?
Yeah.
It's like you really care that and it's like, you're kind of cheering for him to to come back later in the season and stuff already. So I thought from that perspective and stuff, I thought it did well, because I think to me that's like the number one thing that these shows have to do, right? Is like they have to create like the stories, and or show the stories that took place like kind of during the season, make turn like, especially turn, especially in like a sport that's kind of like new to a North
Yeah.
American audience. I think it's really important because it's like, everybody kind of has like a vague idea of who LeBron James is, right?
Yeah.
Or like, who Tom Brady is and stuff, right? If so you wanted to put like, if you put like a, like a Tom Brady like documentary, it's something like on ESPN or whatever. It's like people kind of have their own opinions on Tom Brady and stuff right now. But you know what I mean? It's like when you're introducing a sport to North American fans, it's like you do have to kind of put in a little bit of that. Here's like some of the personal stories of the guys on the team. And this is why, it's they have that whole Sam Harris intro where he's talking about how great rugby is, how the physicality and all that. And it's like that's great, but it's like you also need to sell the sport using the people that are in the sport and the stories that are in the sport. And you know, I think I thought they did a good job conveying a few of those the stories for the Austin Gilgronis during for some of the players. And I hope over the next, like I said, 3 episodes out right now. Haven't watched the third one, but I hope over the next like 4 episodes or whatever, they kind of lean in and like flesh out. I want to say like character development just because it's obviously writing on TV, but obviously, hey, they're not actually characters, they're real people. But like, flesh out some of the stories of a lot of the other players on the team and stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, I got asked about this on Reddit because I'd previously wondered, oh, is this going to be MLR's version of Drive to Survive? So if you're not a Formula One fan, Drive to Survive is the Netflix show that details each season of Formula One, but it does it in a very dramatic way so that if you're a fan of the sport, you know some glaring irregularities when they talk about certain things. And in the sense that Drive to Survive builds up the drama
Hmm.
more than the sport itself. So I
Yeah.
responded saying that it's closer to an actual documentary. It's closer to All or Nothing than Drive to Survive, but even then, it doesn't have the level of manufactured drama that's in
Hmm.
All or Nothing as well. But there are a few issues that I've found with the show so far, and you can say, "Oh, it's." I'm going to put it down to its infancy. It's not maybe a season 2 or 3 of a different team may be able to address these issues, but it's things like this. Like, so I said that episode 2 goes to preseason, and it also explains how Adam Gilchrist became the owner of Austin,
Hmm.
and that's explained in about 3 or 4 minutes. When now, if I was
You want to see more of that. Yeah, yeah. No.
Well, the thing is that you want to get people attached to this team, so you need to show them, I think, at their lowest, but that they're trying hard. So you can show, let's say, for example, the 2019 season, because they do bring it up that
They do,
they
yeah, 'cause
went,
they have that like I think guys having like breakfast or whatever, like the
yeah, they're
four
having a meal of
like
some
like
description,
four
and they're,
guys that have been there for
yeah,
like the entire run of Austin MLR.
yeah, and they're talking about it. And I now personally, I would feel like you should open with 2019, talking about how you came so close in so many games, and you're the first team to go 0-16 in an MLR season. And then you open with, and then you continue. So the episode ends with the purchase of um, Austin by Adam Gilchrist and being rebranded as the Gilgronis. And then the final bit is game 5 of the 2020 season. So the last game of the shortened season, winning the game, the first game they've won in like 2 years at that point, lifting the Texas Cup. And then the start episode 2 with COVID's cancelled the season and then you move ahead to the start of the 2021 season, because I just feel like the pacing of this is the
Yeah,
beginning of the
here
2021 season. Now we're going
oh,
to the preseason. Now we're going back to the season.
the
That's a bit
one.
jarring for me.
I mean, okay, one, I'm watching Book of Boba Fett right now, so flashbacks are easy to follow. They're not that bad.
I
Um,
know, but when it comes to a fictional drama,
yeah,
that's one thing. When
but
it
I'll
comes
say
to
I think
sport,
the
it's
one
something
the
else.
one big thing though that I think you're missing with that is they probably had a film crew following them for the 2021 season.
I know, but in the
They
sense, so
probably
so what I think is that that
they
like
wouldn't have
breakfast
had
scene
it
with
previous.
them around the table. I think they could have done that for talking about
On that, it's like
2019
the
and
first
2020,
episode. I
and then
think
you
I
can
think
have the
yeah.
actual genuine emotional reactions to it of like, we were so close at this game, we were so near for that, we were only having 100 and so
So
people in.
you just kind of would have switched the order of how they did that, really.
I
Like,
would have switched the order.
oh yeah,
The second point I want to make is, this is again, it's something that I feel is important, but is something that can be improved as how this goes on, is target audience. Because I don't know what this is for. Because if it's for the die-hard fans, like the AG, paint yourself orange to go along to Bold Stadium, they're going to know all the main details. And yes, the extra insight helps. But for new fans, while I would agree, like, yes, Connor Mooneyham, like highlighting him in episode 1 and then him getting concussion in episode 2, that is a good step. Is that I don't know, as a new fan of this sport, enough about this team to get invested in them. So I'm not. So obviously we won't be able to know this until we see like viewing figures for Inside the Scrum on Fox Sports 2 if this has been successful. But I do feel as though there needs to have been a more emotional connection to the team as a whole, rather than just like Mac Mason for like 2 minutes and Connor Mooneyham for like 4 minutes. You need to you have to give the audience, why should I care about this team? Which is why I say you open with talking about 2019 and 2020. So you can say, this is us as our lowest, and this is where we go from here. Because everyone likes an underdog. But that's it. I've got to say that Connor Mooneyham's concussion, showing that it's not as soon as you see it kind of thing, it happens. It's a very gradual thing. Like, obviously, we know with Rowan's Law in Ontario, the importance of second impact syndrome and preventing that and concussion play. So I think that is incredibly important, not just for fans of rugby, but fans of sport, especially contact sport in general, that they understand that concussion is very complicated. And to be honest, any brain injury, because that is what concussion is, can have different factors and isn't just as clear cut as other things can present it to be. That's why. So that's my view of Inside the Scrum. I think it's a good start. I'd like to see it be built upon for next season. But my question is, we say, what team would you like to see featured in 2022? I'm going to change it slightly. What team would you like to see featured in 2022 that isn't the Arrows? Because I know that we would both say the Arrows.
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, I think the only thing that I was like, I kind of wish I saw out of the first 2 episodes that we didn't, is that moment in the first episode where Sam Harris and Hugh Roach sit down, and Sam Harris is basically like, dude, you played terribly on the weekend. And Hugh Roach turns to the camera, is like, do we have to film this? I want it to be like, yes, you do. That would be, I want to see that conversation. If you're going to put the camera there in the room for like, I think that would be, get like get something trending on social media for like some crazy, I think like that kind of insight and stuff would be like, if you filmed it, it makes me wonder the stuff that they didn't film that was not put into the movie, and I kind of want to see that. A team that's not, let's say not Austin, and I mean, yeah, like I would say Toronto, because that's my favorite team. Also, probably interesting. Also, obviously, it'd be an interesting team to follow too. Toronto 2021 would have been a very interesting sort of docu-series. But I think if you got to go star power and stuff, I think LA seems to be I feel like it would be LA if you were to do a different team. Yeah, you?
I'm kind of torn between 2 teams. One, I'd say that if I had to pick one, it would be New York, just because I think that's going to have a lot more of a broader appeal, because even if you don't know rugby, you do know New York, if that makes sense. The other one would be Dallas, because I'd like them to talk about how getting prepared for 2021 and then having to withdraw and then focus on 2022. But like I said, this is I think it's a really great series so far. I'm looking forward to watching episode 3 after this recording ends, and then watching the remaining episodes in the build-up to the 2022 season.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, we've only got a little time left, so we're going to look at other MLR news. Now, obviously, being off for 3 or 4 weeks means that there's been a lot of signings, and if you want to get late, just a odd one here and there.
Yeah, I didn't like Dallas announce their entire team while we were gone or something like.
I think Dallas announced that everyone they'd signed
Yeah.
had filled up. So then they just announced the general roster as a whole, as
Yeah.
well as their development players as well.
Mhm.
Like I said, there's been a lot of names. We're not going to name them all. I would recommend that if you are interested in who's been signed by what team, to follow MLR Stats on Instagram. But we're going to focus, as we always do, on the Canadian players. So the first one up, it had been kind of spoiled by Rugby Canada with the Sevens announcement
Yeah.
in the start of the New World Series, but it's now official. Andrew Coe has joined New York, or Rugby New York, Rugby United New York, New York, New York. The city's so nice they named it twice.
The orange and blue rugby team.
Exactly. Now, this is the only trade from one team to another, and it's Mo Abdelmonem, who is staying in Texas, but is leaving Austin to join Dallas. So that'll be interesting to watch. Obviously, Mo didn't have
Was that a trade? I thought he just signed there. Was that a trade?
He was traded, and Austin received nothing. So it's technically a signing, but what I mean is just he's moving from one city in Texas to another city in Texas. But we were watching Abdelmonem's progress in 2021. Unfortunately, he got injured, and that ruled him out for the remainder of the season. So I am looking forward to seeing what he can do for the Jackals. Over in Los Angeles, Lindsay Stevens has re-signed with the Giltinis. In New England, Regan O'Gorman has signed again with the Free Jacks.
Mm-hmm.
And in DC, the former Arrow, Luke Campbell, has re-signed for Old Glory. So, so of that long list of those number of weeks, only 5 Canadians really stood out. There are some other interesting trades as well. I think there's more interesting stuff going on from the coaching staff as well. Like Aaron Jarvis has joined Dallas as an assistant coach. Kane Thompson is now the new head coach of the NOLA Gold as well. But an interesting development is that New York's Harry Bennett, although he declared in December, has announced his retirement from the sport. So Harry, thank you very much for your service, both to New York and MLR and rugby as a whole, and wish you all the best in the next steps of your journey. So of that list of 5 Canadians, we've only 4 of them competed in MLR last year. Obviously, Andrew Coe has been with the Sevens, but is there any of those 5 that you're excited to see come play in 2022?
Yeah, I think kind of looking at that, it's like it's obviously nice to see Luke Campbell back with Old Glory. Old Glory kind of has a nice little Canadian contingent there with Fraser and Ilnicki already as well. Obviously, they had Hearn last year too. So as
Ilnicki takes his room in the Canadian house.
I was gonna say, I think they did they not like did somebody not refer to it as like the Canadian embassy at one point, like where they live?
That's brilliant.
But yeah, so it's like that's obviously nice to see. Mo Abdelmonem, still probably one of the more underrated guys in Major League Rugby, right? And I did like the Jackals announcement of him, because it's the one thing that he is known for doing extremely well is jackal. So it's like one of the best jackler in Texas is now on the Jackals, right? So that's going to be, there's a lot of, how many times we're going to say jackal so many times this year. But yeah, so it's so that's going to be great to see, man. And be, obviously too, like joining an expansion team, right? That is a lot of like room for opportunity. The other flankers on Dallas right now are the possibly the greatest name in Major League Rugby, Charlie McKill, Calvin Gentry, Bronson Tellis, who we know from last year as well, and Amir Oy M. Honlin. Sorry, apologies if I butchered that pronunciation. So it's like they got some like young flankers. No, like, and when I kind of look at that too, and it's like, Charlie McKill's played for the Scotland Sevens, but it's like I don't know if there's necessarily like a clear cut who's going to start on that team, right? So there's some there's some opportunities there. Lindsey Stevens, I memean, he's going to slot back in with the LA Giltinis, who, obviously, that's the LA Giltinis. They've had, I think the most impressive thing with the LA Giltinis to me right now is that they managed to retain so many of their players, and they still brought in guys and added to that too. Obviously, Stevens will be, Canadian eligible, and they, DTH is there, Lesage is there. Canadian hooker. He's now got a Canadian loosehead prop to help him out too with Justice Sears Duru. So that, LA kind of really beefing up the Canadian content and keeping Stevens around also kind of helps that. Regan O'Gorman I think will be fun. Let's get an all Canadian engine room going in New England. He can line up beside Josh Larson, which is, that'll be hopefully
Josh Larson was being lonely, being the only Canadian on the squad.
Yeah, exactly. So they put a Canadian right next to him too. I thought O'Gorman looked pretty good in the Coastal Cup, the couple games that he played for East Van. So kind of nice to see him coming back. I feel like, I know we put on this, but I feel like we talked about a little bit before. Maybe
we talked about it when it was leaked.
When it was leaked,
when Rugby Canada told everyone.
Well, all right. So I guess it's official now. Is that the only difference here? Yeah. So I mean, like, it's good. I'm excited to see what he does. Coming back to the 15s game after representing Canada at the Olympics and sevens, and nice to see Canadians kind of being spread around the league more, and more guys coming in and joining the league, and guys, even if it's not with the same team, like O'Gorman and Abdelmonem, like it's nice to see guys kind of being able to like move to different teams, still finding jobs in Major League Rugby as well. I guess Austin's Canadian contingent's kind of going to be a little bit smaller than last year by now, eh?
Yeah, definitely thinned out, you can say.
Mm-hmm. Still, obviously, I think the biggest thing though too is it's like there's still, there's obviously some other like really interesting moves across the league as a whole too, right? Like I think, we kind of mentioned, LA's resigning a lot of guys. Kane Thompson being the head coach of NOLA, I feel like that's a big change, especially considering, Nate Osborne kind of being at the forefront of that team for a while, and NOLA being one of the most consistent at retaining players and coaches and everything. LA seems like they're kind of beefing up. New York looks like they're beefing up a little bit. San Diego looks like they're trying to go back to becoming what we all thought the San Diego Legion were 2 years ago. The Houston, maybe low key the most interesting team. They have like what, 6 guys coming back, 7 guys coming back. They're basically an expansion team too. So who knows what that how that roster is going to be able to perform under Henneke Meyer too, right? So preseason just 2 weeks away, so it'll be interesting to see how this starts to shape up as we kind of look closer and start getting into some season previews and start making some predictions here.
So unfortunately, it will be 2 weeks until we can see the MLR teams taking part in preseason. However, there is rugby coming up this weekend. We have the Champions and Challenge Cup, which you can view on epcrugby.tv. It's €20 for an entire weekend. So that includes Challenge and Champions Cup games. So, time them out, and you can pay at most $5 a game. So it should work out.
Wow, that did not make it sound less expensive than what it actually is.
I don't handle the money on this side.
I was gonna say I love the idea at the end of this podcast where we kind of promote where you can watch rugby, but like there's no sugarcoating that is a steep.
Nope,
price.
Not at all. It is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. That's okay. We don't make the prices on the show. We don't pick. That is a steep one.
However, we do have some good news if you're looking for pricing for free on the Rugby Network. It has recently been announced is the Japan League One. So all the action going on in Japan, they are showing 2 games live to North American territories, so that's the USA and Canada. And then all games will be shown on repeat, available online. You can actually get the first round on the Rugby Network right now. And it's not just Japanese players. There's also some Kiwi players that played during the past weekend, like Damian McKenzie, for example. Also, internationals, including Quade Cooper, were playing as well. So I believe that if you want to wake up on a Monday morning and just have a load of rugby from Japan there for you, something to tie you over between the days until MLR returns to our screens. I think that's definitely a way to go. All right, I think we can end the podcast there. Thank you so much for joining us. If you would like to see any more of our episodes, you can watch them on YouTube. If you'd like to listen to any more episodes, we're on all the podcasting, so Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor FM. We are available on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and now we are on TikTok. And if you have any suggestions of what we can do on TikTok, please let us know on our platforms. We will say now, we're not doing any TikTok dances. That has been vetoed.
You're gonna do one. You're gonna do one, Stu. We gotta get the follower number up. It's what the people want to see, Stu. It's what they want to see, man.
I know, but I've got to reel them in, and then got to make them want it more and more and more, and that's why they got to keep subscribing and following. That's how it works.
Yeah.
Now, if you're watching this episode on YouTube, you can clearly see our handles down below. But if you're listening and you want to follow Derek, where can they find you?
At Set the Jet across everything, including TikTok too. So follow the Rouge Rugby podcast and myself on TikTok. We need to come up with some content ideas as we're promoting this stuff. People can't just go to the page and see nothing,
we will. We'll figure out something. We can tell them where they can watch Inside the Scrum. That's where we're going to...
There you go.
Or we'll just do an account of just taking clips.
There we go. Become do film reviews on all the great rugby documentaries. Well, we can do that.
That's a start.
That's a start. There we go.
And if you'd like to follow me, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. My handle is Hardman, spelled H4RDMAN. And if you'd like to follow me on TikTok, you can find me at Stu Hardy. Thank you very much for joining us for a brand new episode in 2022. I hope that you can join us for the rest of the year, but at least until the next episode.